Welcome to the Dance NYC 2022 Symposium, Life Cycles, Livelihoods, Legacies. We will be with you shortly. Today's schedule. Today we gathered for a welcome and wake up, morning sessions, an 11:30 dance break presented by Kumbe Center for African and Diaspora Dance, and 12 p.m. early afternoon sessions. We will now begin our 2:30 late afternoon sessions, followed by a 4:15 community daily debrief, where all attendees are encouraged to attend and discuss the day's activities. Finally, at 6 o'clock, we will present our last keynote presentation. Accessibility. ASL interpretation and live captioning will be provided for today's session. A stream-to-text link will be posted in the chat and participation guide for access to the live transcription. Stay connected with us by posting your takeaways on social media using the hashtags DanceSimp, DanceNYC 2022, and DanceSimp2022. On Instagram at dance.nyc, on Twitter at dance.nyc, and on Facebook at dance/NYC. Community guidelines. Based on Dance NYC's values of justice, equity, and inclusion, we agree to share our opinions, challenge perspectives, and engage or debate respectfully, and acknowledge and course correct if harm is caused. Honor everyone's personhood and humanity. Not tolerate speech that is disparaging, abusive, violent, or that is intended to defame someone's character publicly. Some features not to miss. Build your agenda of sessions. Connect with other attendees. Join community conversations. Visit the exhibitor hall. Don't forget to check out the 2022 Symposium digital program book. We are happy to be in community with you. Thanks for joining. Welcome to the Dance NYC 2022 Symposium, Life Cycles, Livelihoods, Legacies. We will be with you shortly. Today's schedule. Today we gathered for a welcome and wake up, morning sessions, an 11:30 dance break presented by Kumbe Center for African and Diaspora Dance, and 12 p.m. early afternoon sessions. We will now begin our 2:30 late afternoon sessions, followed by a 4:15 community daily debrief, where all attendees are encouraged to attend and discuss the day's activities. Finally, at 6 o'clock, we will present our last keynote presentation. Accessibility. ASL interpretation and live captioning will be provided for today's session. A stream-to-text link will be posted in the chat and participation guide for access to the live transcription. Stay connected with us by posting your takeaways on social media using the hashtags DanceSimp, DanceNYC 2022, and DanceSimp2022. On Instagram at dance.nyc, on Twitter at dance.nyc, and on Facebook at dance/NYC. Community guidelines. Based on Dance NYC's values of justice, equity, and inclusion, we agree to share our opinions, challenge perspectives, and engage or debate respectfully, and acknowledge and course correct if harm is caused. Honor everyone's personhood and humanity. Not tolerate speech that is disparaging, abusive, violent, or that is intended to defame someone's character publicly. Some features not to miss. Build your agenda of sessions. Connect with other attendees. Join community conversations. Visit the exhibitor hall. Don't forget to check out the 2022 Symposium digital program book. We are happy to be in community with you. Thanks for joining.
Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you're enjoying your time at the symposium today. My name is Ariel Herrera. I am the Manager for Research and Advocacy at Dance NYC. My pronouns are he, him, his. I'm joining you from the Muncie Lenape land of Manhattan. I am an undisabled cisgender male, Asian American of Filipino descent. I have short dark hair and I'm currently wearing eyeglasses with black frame and a gray long sleeve shirt. Behind me is a white wall. Thank you all for joining us for the Digital 2022 Dance NYC Symposium. A gentle reminder that as we are at the mercy of technology, we may experience delays, sound issues, and other interruptions during our time together. So we ask for your patience ahead of time. A couple of announcements. First, ASL interpreters from SignNexus and closed captioning services provided by the Viscardi Center will be available throughout the session. A stream to text link will also be available and posted in the chat for further reference. You can find speaker information in the program description below, as well as under the speakers module on the left side of your Whova web app or the menu of your Whova mobile app. This information is also available on our website. Second, please feel free to post comments you want to share with the community in the chat section of to the right of this event room. Dance NYC moderators will be interacting with you there, and the panel will be accepting questions if time allows. If you're not able to access the chat, please call our helpline at 212-966-4454 for technical support or to propose comments. After the session ends, there will be a session follow-up in the community section of Whova where we can continue the conversation. Lastly, we hope that you will help us to amplify these conversations. Please repost, tag us, and share your takeaways on Twitter at DanceNYC, Instagram at dance.nyc, and Facebook dance/NYC, all using the hashtag DanceSymp or DanceSYMP. And now we begin our session, Continuum of Lives in Dance series, a series of short conversations addressing the emotional, logistical, and financial issues that arise in navigating life's many stages as a dance worker. We will be covering topics including supporting young dancers, dance, parenthood, and artistic practice, as well as eldership and aging in dance. Please welcome our speakers, Beverly Lopez, Stacie Webster, Alexandra, Makeda Thomas, Ananya Chatterjea, and Ronald K. Alexander.
Hello, everyone. My name is Stacie Webster. I use she, her pronouns. I'm currently in the land of the Lenape people in Hell's Kitchen, New York. I'm a non-disabled, cisgendered, white, lesbian woman. I'm wearing a gray and white striped hoodie top with long sleeves. I have blonde hair parted to the side. I have some silver, long, kind of dangly earrings on, and I have a yellowy, blurry background behind me. I'm originally from Utah. I grew up dancing in my mom's dance studio in our basement. I danced on the dance team in my high school. I majored in dance performance in college. And I moved to New York and have been studying dance and training young adults and children, and even adults since I've been here. So I'm really excited to be with you today and talk about how we are supporting young dancers. And I pass it on to Beverly.
Hey, thank you, Stacie. Hi, my name is Beverly Lopez. I go by she, her, hers. Right now, I'm in Union City, New Jersey. I'm calling in from the unceded territory of the Lenape people. I am a non-disabled cisgendered woman. I am Puerto Rican, born and raised in the Bronx. I'm also the artistic director of REDi Dance Company and workshop facilitator of the Dance Bridge Workshop. I'm a teaching artist with the Dream Yard Project, a community builder, performer, sister, friend. Right now, I am wearing a brown and orange jacket with floral and checkered patterns. Behind me is a cream or off-white wall. There's a small frame with flowers above me on this wall, and I'm beside a large window. I'm really happy to be here and to continue the conversation that me and Stacie started on supporting young dancers. So Beverly out.
Thank you, Beverly. This is Stacie coming back in. Yeah, we had the chance to meet last week. I'm so excited to be here sharing this space because what we do is so similar, yet we have two completely different communities that we're working with right now. And I've learned a lot from you, even in just this short time, about your approach and kind of how you shared with your value system and the things that you're bringing into your classes and the mentorship that you're offering. So that's kind of where I wanted to start with our questions. Can you tell us a little bit more about REDi Dance and your vision with that? Stacie out.
Thank you, Stacie. So yeah, REDi Dance Company started in, I'd say, 2017. We are an arts organization, primarily a dance theater, dance company that presents works, right? And we really use Latin dance forms as well as modern dance, house in our presentations and the way we create work. But a lot of our work is storytelling, and we generally have education programs as well for young people. We serve primarily youth in the Bronx. And so this includes the Dance Bridge Workshop, as well as the junior company that is a young adult sector of the umbrella REDi Dance Company. And yeah, I mean, I have been working with the Dream Yard Project for, I would say, 6 years now. And it's a social justice-based arts organization that places me in a lot of the schools in the DOE, public schools from K through 12. And so a lot of my approaches to, you know, serving youth with the REDi Dance Company is very much influenced by the work with the Dream Yard Project, the work where we center identity, right? Themes of activate, those words, also connection. And it has been very important to me in the past 6 years. And so what we do now is provide ongoing workshops for teams to allow them to center and focus in on these concepts of identity, these concepts of, you know, creation and connection with other people. The Dance Bridge Workshop in particular takes place every summer, and it's like an incubator, an oasis, if you will, outside of the day-to-day mundane, you know, routine that they experience maybe in the school system and, you know, everyday life. And it's almost an opportunity to sit to the side and just focus in and zero in on, you know, these concepts of myself, my self-care, healing, and it's very fun. And we generally focus a lot on learning new techniques, right? Learning new things, right? The basic steps of some techniques, right? Like basic information that's very helpful for growth and, you know, very helpful for being challenged. But at the same time, the meat of our work with young people is being able to allow them to take that information into their container, into their body, and then utilize it, whether that's in improvisation jams, ciphers, or in the creation process. I think it's very important for young people to get used to the act of creating and creating constantly and often. So yeah, that is basically what we do with the REDi Dance Company. Beverly out.
Yeah, Beverly, Stacie coming back in. The thing that I love about what you're doing is I feel like you're bringing things into spaces that students actually want and would benefit from. I taught my classes this morning and I was asking my teenagers, they're like, you know, my higher level kids, so they've been training with me for a while, but everyone has a different background, right? So people come into our program from other dance studios or wherever they're coming in from, and their main takeaway today was kind of like the burnout that they face as trying to study this, and also the thing of comparison that they've all had to go through pretty deeply. And I just feel like the ideas that you brought in, like identity and activate and creation, like that's what kids want. You know, that's actually on the list. Yeah, that's what we want.
I want that all day, every day. Right.
And so I just I took the chance today to kind of ask them what they needed, which I haven't done that before, because it's usually like, what do I need from you? You know, like, what do I need you to do? Instead of, what does this space feel like for each person? And how are you managing it? You know, because they all felt so much pressure, like they couldn't take a break and that they had to keep doing this consistently or they would fall behind, or, you know, that comparison. And I feel like the comparison was two-sided, right? Because there's kids that love dance who are loved by their teachers, but then maybe the other kids don't feel that same love because they're not, you know, administering those qualities that we're looking for, that compliance and all of these things. So I really love that idea of what you're doing so much. Stacie out.
I'm thinking about something you said with me when we last spoke that really stood with me, was this idea of how the young people in your community, like they connect their self-worth to how great of a dancer they are, or how much attention they're receiving, or how successful they are in executing X, Y, and Z, right? It's always like their self-worth is attached to something else. And I feel like, I wonder if maybe that has to do with not only just seeking acceptance, right, as young people, like even adults, but young people are always seeking acceptance and to be acknowledged, just like what you just said. And that's a little dangerous sometimes, and that's scary to know that, and to witness ways that people take advantage of that, right? And I know that you talked a lot about boundaries and how boundaries are important to you, and then we started talking about, well, how do we then teach young people about boundaries to protect themselves in this very vulnerable stage? I think you mentioned at some point that like the young people from like, I don't know, like middle school, high school age is so delicate. And how do we get young people to acknowledge that you can have boundaries, right? You can navigate in spaces that, you know, is risky. But then how do you emphasize the importance of consent, not doing something that doesn't feel comfortable for you? That was just a bunch of questions that came up for us. And I wonder if you can speak to, you know, what was on your mind when you did bring that up in our last talk, you know?
Sure. Thank you. Stacie back in. This idea of boundaries has kind of come through the study of the history of the art form that I teach. I currently teach jazz, and I grew up dancing what I thought was jazz. We called it jazz, but I don't think it was necessarily rooted in anything. And we were never told the history or the roots of it all. So as I began to become more aware and be around more people who were actually rooted in the community of the originators of jazz, I found this huge gap in the communication of history and timeline and access and privilege and appropriation and sexualization and, you know, all these things that we teach these styles to young kids, but what's the pathway through where we got our information? And particularly in my industry, because it's more commercial, I don't know if particularly, but specifically to my industry, because it's more commercial, dance is sold as a product, right? And so as the dancer, you are the vehicle for that. And so that is an emphasis that the kids take it on. They see what's going on. They see we're supposed to promote ourselves. We're supposed to be marketable. We're supposed to be all of these many things. But it doesn't resonate exactly with the art form. You know, it's more the industry talking. And when we think about the industry, we think about who are the mentors and what are we creating and why and how do we go about doing this? And particularly with the jazz style and the journey through and the loss of the rootedness of the origins and the acknowledgement of Black culture where it's rooted. And, you know, a lot of people walk in and they think it's like a ballet modern fusion created jazz. You know, they're totally, most dancers, most dance teachers that I've heard from don't speak to it. So along those lines, and then stylistically, and then there's the competitive world, the products and the pieces that people are creating do get what I think is inappropriate for kids, because we're sexualizing them a lot, and we're just taking whatever we want and putting it together and calling it jazz, because we don't have that accountability, because we don't have that community, you know, because as teachers, sometimes we're in our own silo thinking that we are I don't know, coming up with these things on our own and that it's accessible to us. So I've tried to have these conversations with my students about, first of all, knowing the importance of knowing the origins and finding people who can communicate that, so that if they know these things, it comes from a more whole place. You know, it comes from they will respond to the information. They get it. Kids know now about the world, you know, like these things, the social media, it does give them a chance to like be involved. And I always encourage them to question, you know, what are we going for? Why are we here? And how do we protect ourselves? And do we have the autonomy to do that as young people? And like, as you were saying, it's even hard as an adult, you know, if we're uncomfortable to take those steps. But this is a good issue that we can always keep in conversation, especially with the kids, you know, because it's like they're totally affected by it on the daily, not just in dance, but kind of everywhere. So, yeah. Along those lines, within your work, and your process of creation and your use of social dance styles, can you share a little bit more how that feels and looks?
Yes, I'm thinking about the balance of, you know, for the performing arts, it's performance, right? Performing arts, and it's so challenging. I think I mentioned this at some other point, but to balance out the product or the sharing or the performance or the objective of the day or the thing that you want the class to understand or learn, right? The objective, the performance, whatever the goal is, and then balance out the basic human needs, right? To be seen, to be understood, to be comforted, right? Like both, you know, are important. And as educators, it's like we're juggling both and trying to be able to like hold it. And I think that the structure of the Dance Bridge workshop Of course, I teach in many different spaces, but, you know, with my advisory team right now, we're really thinking of the ways we want to approach our education, you know. And so the idea of, yeah, let's learn something new. Let's take in some information. Let's actually apply knowledge and steps and movements into the body and interpret it wherever way it comes up for you, right? Let it come out and let it seep through in whatever way makes sense for you. And then the idea of then, you know, applying it to group work, you know, in community with other people, like these steps that we learned just previously. How am I understanding it? What's my favorite moment from whatever I just received? And then how am I going to utilize it in my choreography, right? Or our group dance or our routine. That's special to me because it's like you're gaining information and then you're using information and you're applying it to a creative practice or a creative process. With social dance in particular, I train mainly in Latin dance forms and modern dance as well, like a multitude of things. I would say I'm a jack of all trades, master of none, and I'm a container, right? My body has taken in a lot of different things, and some things stick and some things don't. We hold a lot. We hold trauma. We hold whatever it is that, you know, stood with us from that dance class that time. And so I really utilize social dances because I feel like it makes it really easy for us to express the complexities of our humanity, right? Like this container that we have with all this information, let's use it. And for me, social dance has been a way to do that because of the fact that most social dances that I practice, house, salsa, bachata, really is about improvisation. And a lot of it is from dances of the diaspora that kind of like cross over. And so giving young people a chance to do social dance, learn the basic steps of it, apply it in a way that makes sense to them in choreography, and then have a cipher or a jam in which they are now expected to practice just like whatever their body remembered or whatever feels good in their body. That's special to me. And I suppose social dance is the way in which I kind of, you know, is a tool that allows me to just have a liberated space. Beverly out.
Stacie back in. I love what you're saying because the things that you're teaching are actually the foundations of so many other things. You know, there's so many styles that the foundation is the steps and the work that you're doing, and you're doing it in a social way with creation and improvisation like included. I love how you said that you were telling me, because I asked you, what does it look like what's the growth that we could measure, you know, like how do we look at our students and see the work showing up? And you told me about your student that was at first kind of just one layer, and then through this time with you, like really uncovered more potential. And how you said they can incorporate it to different music styles. So I love it that you're teaching them about music, you know, because that's also something that I feel like young people desire, is that connection with different kinds of music and how to express freely. But we need those tools, right? Like we need those foundational ideas to help guide us, I think, especially in improvisation. I've been thinking a lot about improv because, you know, it's creativity on the spot, like that's what it is. And then wherever you are, it's used as a tool for that space, you know? So, and I feel like everyone wants to be creative. And then when we give them tools for improv, it kind of allows them to practice that. And that's like really fulfilling for a lot of people, I think. Stacie out.
Yes, I'm remembering too. You mentioned at some point in time how you feel like the choices that you make as an individual artist, you stay true to what you approve of and what you don't approve of, what feels good in the moment, and what your choices are based around, like the particular group that you're serving at the time, right? It's a particular class that you're in. And I just would like to hear maybe a little bit about, like, how has the choices that you've made artistically, in a way, empower young people too, right? And despite where you're located, despite the fact that the institution and or the employers in the space are not aligned with what you care about. Like, how has your own artistic choices been able to empower young people? Because you did talk about how sometimes you feel as though you are like a little like different, and I respect that. So Beverly out.
Thank you, Stacie back in, and I'll try to kind of wrap up. Considering each of us are using our creativity in the spaces, I think is the most beneficial thing that we can bring. I try to create work for my students that they can identify with. I try not to pick topics that are unavailable to them. Everyone can dance about losing someone, or we can dance about finding that moment in life where we want to keep going, or acceptance. I try to craft my work around something that they can really dive into. And it doesn't necessarily fit stylistically along, kind of what you're saying, the typical lines of what we're used to seeing. But when students are given that space as you're talking to kind of grow, that's the most beautiful thing, I think that we both kind of value that. So, great. I will now pass it on to the next section. Thank you so much, Beverly and Dance NYC. This has been such a treat. Passing it on to Alexandra and Makeda.
Thank you.
Hello. Would you like to start introductions?
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Makeda Thomas, and I use she, her pronouns. I'm a dance artist, scholar, curator, and director of the Dance and Performance Institute, where I'm pleased to join you today from Irie, land of the hummingbird, also known as the island of Trinidad in the Caribbean. I'm a Black woman with long dreadlocks, wearing a white sleeveless top. And the voices you may hear or may see in the people you may see in the background are my children. I'm mother to two children, Shiloh, who is 11, and Nyalove, who just turned 5. I'll stop there to let Alex have a moment to introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Alexandra. I go by she, her. I'm sitting in Crown Heights, Brooklyn, which is the land of the Lenape and Canarsie. And I am my family was originally Ukrainian Jewish. I am white with curly reddish hair and a very messy top knot, and with a blurry background behind me. And I am a choreographer and director, these days mostly for theater. I danced with Bill T. Jones for many years, and then I ran a dance theater company for about 17 years, and then slowly transitioned into choreographing for theater, movement directing for theater, and now directing mostly movement-heavy work. And I teach at Princeton University and some other higher education institutions, and devise and teach many workshops through my company. And I am the mother of 2 children as well, a 15-year-old and a 10-year-old, and I live in a blended family with another 10-year-old and my partner. That's it for me. So, and Makeda and I would love to just invite questions around this topic of parenting while arting and being a parent artist and all that kind of stuff. So please do put your questions in the chat and they will get relayed to us. We'd be happy to answer them. So we thought maybe we would ask each other a question to set the ball rolling. And then hopefully if you audience out there have questions, we would love to hear from you. Would you rather ask or answer first?
I would probably like to answer first. And, you know, parenting and arting, so I turned my camera off just because I had to like get frustrated. I started to forget that I said I'm on a Zoom call and I need you to be quiet. And it's like, Makeda, can you please keep your camera on the whole time? I'm like, yes, but I don't think anyone's going to want to see that. I'm like, get it together. I'm on a Zoom. That is my
There's been a lot of new parenting realities as we have hit pandemic, and art has become art on Zoom and not art often in a dedicated space, child-free space. So there has been an unprecedented amount of negotiating the parent artist life in the last 2 years. I thought I had done all the parent artist negotiations, but apparently I hadn't even scratched the surface until we hit Zoom dance classes and remote high school and all of the things that came with this very surprising year. So if you would rather answer first, I will ask you, what is something that you learned through becoming a parent that feels like it has changed your art making, and art making as broad as you want to do that, teaching, curating, arting, but something you've learned as from being a parent that you have taken into your artistic practice that you didn't have before?
Gosh, how do I separate the things? You know, my children, our family belongs to a beautiful big village. Many other dance artists are their aunties and their uncles and their friends. And they've been raised in dance studios and sitting in prams and crawling under benches while I'm teaching classes at universities. They've been wide-eyed at 2 a.m. in panyards during carnival time. They were being breastfed during rehearsals. They are listening to lectures in which I know they understood nothing, but somehow was connecting, following choreography. My son, asking Fauna Fraser one time for her chicken for one of her performances. He watched a couple nights of performances and she had this rubber chicken that was part of her show. And at the end of it, when he finally got it as a gift. He's like, I got the chicken! And that being part of their lives, traveling through airports around the world and performing with me as Babes in Arms. We live a transnational life between New York City and the Caribbean. And perhaps the thing I could have known, but what was affirmed for sure was how much your village, your community in dance are going to actually support you through this journey. And that it's not for me, it wasn't something that was quite separate or that I had to hide or apologize for or keep separate as something other than my professional work. And that definitely has been realized within the last recent years, where so much of the work that I'm doing in the performance art of masquerade and carnival is around mothering, and daughtering. It's this intentional practice of mothering is definitely something I could not have conceived of. This way of mothering I could not have conceived of before becoming a mother. Many major choices and a million more smaller choices to be made, rebuffing conventions in many regards, and making new traditions, making new rituals, developing new ideas about what home and family even mean or could look like, and figuring out how to carve time to and from between artistic practice and family, and having them all mixing up. So, yes, that would be my answer.
Beautiful. Alexandra, back in. I think that must feel relieving to some people out there hearing this, who might feel like, oh, it's not the right time, we're not ready, there's no way to do it, it's going to be too hard. And of course, it is hard. And I think in some ways can be harder than what I see happening. But also, it is an ecosystem that feeds itself. And I'm imagining that some people who are listening to this might have many years ago seen a video of a little 14-month-old baby kind of leading a room full of dancers. That was my 14-month-old baby, and it was my dance rehearsal. We were learning his dances for an evening length work that I was making, where I learned the dances of my children and taught them to my very professional adult dance company, and tried to learn from their innate intuitive movement life, something about, for me, it was something about the divine. And of course, that never would have happened if I didn't have both dance and art in an ecosystem together. But I know it can be very daunting for artists to feel like they can have a child and continue to live in this world. And I do feel like before you have your first child, your art does feel in many ways like a child to you. It's your baby. And then you have a real baby. And there's a process. Did feel like having a second child to me to have my first child, to balance it with my art life. So it's not without consideration, but I think it must feel really good to hear what you just said for people out there maybe considering parenthood. I am ready for a question.
Oh, gosh. I think I'm going to cheat a bit and just, I would love to hear your answer to that. And I've still got another question, but I would love to hear your answer to that first.
Sure. I mean, I heard you answer in some ways both directions of it, like what has changed about your parenting to be an artist and what has changed about your art to be a parent. And it sounds like there's a pretty amazing Venn diagram between them. I would say that before I had children, the stakes seemed so high all the time in art making. They didn't get the frosted blue, gel for my lights. This is a tragedy. And then, when you've sat up at night with a kid with pneumonia or been to the hospital or, held your crying baby in your arms who's inconsolable, suddenly, the frosted blue gel just really comes into perspective. And it stayed in perspective forever for me. So the pandemic also did a similar thing where now I'm like, I'm doing the best I can. I can't do better than this. It's going to be what it's going to be. And I'm trying my hardest, and that's all I can do. I think that trying to model self-forgiveness for my children has changed my art. And I think that parent artists tend to be pretty amazing with time management and efficiency. It's like even to be able to, the muscularity of being able to turn on and off creativity. I feel like before I had kids, life was always, I might always start dreaming about something or imagining something and, sit down to really think out what that might be or feel like or look like, an image for a thing. And in many ways, you could just have this dreamscape where your creative life was ongoing all the time. You know, you had to show up for work, do the dishes, but there is this sense that you could always be dreaming, or at least I think I had that sense. I don't have that sense as much anymore. I have to sit down and I have to think creatively right now for an hour. And then I have to mostly stop because I want to pay attention, good attention, to this person who's in front of me. Now, of course, I'm a creative parent and I love building things and making things with the kids. And of course, my artistic life comes out in my parenting. But in terms of really making progress in art making, figuring out what I'm doing with a scene in a play, etc., I don't feel like my dream switch is turned on all the time. And I think I grieved that for a little while, or for years. And then I started to get more skilled at being able to turn it on and turn it off and say, well, this is your time to be creative, so do it now. It's not just gonna, fall to you and land on you like glitter, just wherever you are.
Wow. Yeah, I've definitely had that experience, feeling, getting quite frustrated at what I thought was, I didn't have that kind of time indulgence anymore. And so it'd be like, look, just this, that, and the next. That's it. And it's not haphazard. It's just so clear. There's just so little room for clutter that I can see it very clearly. And it's literally all the time I have, and next. And I don't think I've ever been resentful, though, of losing that dreamscape time. But what it did make me aware of is, in an odd way, of how much more I could do because of this skill with clarity that had been developed. So, yeah, that's a great point,
Decisions, yeah, and you said it so clearly. I feel like I became much more facile with decision making. Great, that's what it's going to be. Well, is that the best decision? I don't know, but that's the decision we're going to go with. Let's see what happens. Let's keep moving. And it doesn't mean I don't go back. I don't change things. I don't think about things. And as you said, it's not haphazard, but it does feel like decisions come more quickly and with more efficiency. Question from the audience: has parenting changed the relationship between you and your dancers, or how you work with them? And Makeda, I know you have a question as well. Shall we do yours and then hit this one?
No, we can go ahead.
Okay. I don't really have dancers that I consider like a possessive anymore, because I mostly work for theater now, so I show up and there's a cast there. I did have a dance company and I have dancers for a long, long time. And I think one of the biggest shifts that happened is I tried to protect my dancers from my children for a long time. And then I realized that it was not only unnecessary, but actually counterproductive. And so then I embraced a lifestyle that I hear you talking about just fully integrating my children into my full life. And yes, breastfeeding during a break, during class, in the hallway at DNA, or, bringing my children on tour. My son, who's 15 now, came on a 8-week tour through Oslo, Amsterdam, Poland, Russia, and was just part of the company. And I think I wanted to protect them, like, I don't want you to feel like you're babysitting my children. And then I just started realizing, and of course I'm respectful of their time and energy. I don't say like, I'm going out dancing, take care of the kids, but I feel like I want my art to be learning from my children. At the time, none of the other members of my company had kids. Now some of them do. And I feel like it did just become that they were part of the family of my company. And that was really beautiful. How about you? Yes,
definitely. I mean, I would agree. I think I the Institute, when I founded the Institute and have the New Waves program, I have this line that I would say to people, because, New Waves is sort of this summer program, and it's wild, and it's like a lot of people, and there's lots of energy, and, my little one at 1 or 2 are running around. And I would say to the group who, we sort of committed under this particular ethos that lended to being responsible. Like, if you see my child and I am nowhere for some reason around, you are responsible for that child. I don't want to hear you couldn't find me or you couldn't find someone else, and so you let him walk down the steps. Like, this community, this gathering that we're all gathered here, we are responsible for one another. So if you see him or her, take them. And it was like, and no one batted an eye. And it was quite natural. And of course, I had my children, the majority of the time. I'm responsible for them. But yes, I need all of you in the same, in ways, a different way, but in a reciprocal way that you need me to do what it is that you're here for. And so this is how I can do this, if I have support from all of you. So to me, I never felt abandoned, perhaps, I don't know. And at this point, there's sort of the expectation, like if I don't bring them to a rehearsal, it's like, oh, the kids are not here? And it's like, no, I have a free day, or this week, they're with their dad, or I've left them here or there. So, but people, the community of artists in which I work in, expect them to be there and present. And that's the only way in which I can do what I do. Now, it doesn't mean that there haven't been times when I, had invitations to do things and there were zero accommodations for children, and they were just not going to help with that. And they were not going to pay anything extra to make anything possible. And so I didn't do those things. And you just have to, I don't do those kinds of engagements. So, and that is quite comfortable with being, yeah.
Yeah, comfortable for me. I mean, unfortunate sometimes. And I love hearing your description of how you're raising your kids, because I do think it starts to change the landscape and makes theaters and presenters and professors and deans and whatever realize, oh, right, you might have kids. Maybe I should consider supporting that, right? And I went through a really strong transition when I went from 1 to 2 kids and it became a much bigger deal to travel with children. I went through a lot of grappling with myself about what felt fair to ask for. You bring Miguel Gutierrez's company in, you don't have to pay for any extra airfare, any childcare, anything, right? And you bring my company in and suddenly it costs you more. Like, is that fair to the presenter? But then, of course, there's the flip side of it. So, it costs me all that much to travel, but suddenly I have to spend my entire salary to be able to be a parent artist. So is that fair to me? And I think there's some area in between in which we are trying to be understanding of each other. I do think the world needs to shift a lot more towards allowing parents to exist out in the world as fully formed human beings and have access to everything. That doesn't mean I'm bringing my kids to 5-star restaurants or to a 8-hour concert. But it does mean I think we need to start listening to each other between organizations and parent artists and changing the world. Looks like we have a question. How have you introduced the idea of familial ecosystem into institutions? Oh, this is exactly what I'm talking about. Did you even have to develop a language for it, or was it organic? I started just asking in a tech writer for childcare that would be covered, for a living space that would be amenable for children, which usually meant a kitchen, and some kind of second sleeping, a bed or a couch or something. And I think some of it was organic in that I would show up and I would have kids, and they would be in the studio or in the building or in the theater or whatever. You know, I would make sure that they were taken care of, but breaks were sometimes not necessarily based on only the students, but they were also based on, I need to breastfeed, or, you know, and I decided that that was okay, but it took work to make that decision for me. Like it didn't feel like it was naturally supported by the institution or the community or the world. So it did feel kind of like walking through brick walls, but I decided at some point, well, I'm just going to walk through. I'm not going to apologize. I'm not going to make myself smaller. And I do think that there's a battle to fight with the, I'm going to say, stigma around being a parent artist, less about being a parent art teacher, or a parent curator or presenter, but definitely a parent creator. I feel like there still remains quite a bit of stigma of, oh, if you're a parent, you're not really serious about your art. You're a hobbyist. And I think that it was more when I first had kids, but I still feel that out there, at least I'm going to say more for people who identify as a mother than as a father. I feel that I hear it less about men who have children than women who have children. But I think that there's still some social stigma to battle of whether or not you're serious, you're a real artist, you're really committed, if you have kids.
Yeah, I remember some years ago doing an interview. It went kind of sideways. It was a radio interview, and started asking about my motherhood, and I don't know where he was trying to go with that. I didn't like how it smelled at the time, and I sort of was like, on air, was like, why would you ask me that? You know, like, you wouldn't ask a man that. Like, I just had the moment. I just shared the uncomfort, the discomfort that I was feeling. I just kind of spread it in that moment and dealt with it. And, you know, the man that was interviewing me backed out of it, and we ended up making a joke about it and got off it. I never answered the question. But that kind of, you have to just root yourself in the reality of your experiences and in your politics. And I was just not having it. And so I guess, you know, spread the word. Don't ask me that because it's not going to go well. Again, these are, you know, this is personal to me, perhaps, and my personality, that I am willing to do that. And I also have to say, again, how much my incredible village, including folks like Ananya Chatterjea. Ananya Chatterjea was one of the first people that invited me with a 3-month-old baby to come to a residency in the dead of winter out in Minnesota. And, you know, through that community of dance workers at that institution really taught me, yes, this is how you can do this, and you can be supported, and this is how you should, you know, they helped me. And so I guess having that support allowed me to be as bold and as brave and as fearless as I have been. But yes, it is work, and it can be scary, and you can feel intimidated sometimes, and people may pull out the P word, the professional word, or the lack thereof, because of the presence of your children. But,
yeah. Okay, so we're about to turn over to the third panel. What would you say if I asked you if there was a pregnant person or couple, artist, about to have a baby as an artist? What would one piece of advice you might offer be to them?
Lord. The piece of advice, really have those conversations, and it will be a series of conversations about what that labor is going to look like. You said a couple, right? You said a couple. Yeah. So that really have a conversation about what that labor is going to look like, given the fact that one person of that couple is going to be has like a lot of credit from the beginning. Their whole bodies are going to be affected. So yeah, I would say that, real honest conversation about what that's going to look like. It can breed a lot of resentment without deep honesty. And willingness to sacrifice. Know that you're just not going to have the kind of time that you had before to do anything. Just know that if you do, if you thought that you could apply for 5 grants, you can do 2. And just really shift. And if you don't shift, it'll become overwhelming. And yeah.
Just internet out.
What do you think? Besides the time
I
shift.
think I'm frozen. Not sure if you can see.
I can hear you. Let's
Yep.
see.
Oh, are you back? I'm back.
Yeah.
I think, and I'll just say this quickly, and then we'll turn over to our last couple. My piece of advice would be similar in that if you are in a partnership, I think there's a lot of reckoning with value as separate from money. And as an artist in general, I think this is a question we all face. What do we consider valuable? Is money the only metric by which we're measuring how something is valuable? So when I was married to my kid's father, he had a job that made more money than my job made. My time in the studio was often uncompensated. Does that mean that time's not worth childcare? There's an algorithm or a metric to, you can only leave the house, the second parent can only leave the house if their job or what they're doing out of the house pays for the childcare. That's not true. Either parent to leave the house, it costs the family and the relationship something. Either it's the other parent's time or it's childcare. And I think that we do really false math with whoever the second person is to leave. Somehow what they're leaving for has to cover childcare. No, they were childcare. The family is paying for childcare because everyone's gone, not because one person's gone. And because often the person who's birthed a child is last to leave in general because they've maybe stayed home for newborn baby life. I think it can get into a thing where, a mom is sort of second class in terms of the value of their work, and it has to somehow bring in enough money for childcare. I think it's really false thinking. It's a family metric, not a mom metric. Now, all caveats for who's a mom and, gender identity, but, and that can be anyone. Okay, so we are turning over. Thank you so much. It was lovely to talk to you.
Oh, pleasure.
Turning over to Ronald and Ananya.
Hello.
Hello.
Ananya.
Yeah, I just want to say, Makeda and Alexandra, there were a lot of things that I was resonating with. So,
I would think so. Yes.
Go ahead, Ronald.
How are you? Don't even bother, right?
Right.
Well, thank you. There's so many things that we can talk about, and I think it's important that we really probably spend detailed information on maybe one or two of those lovely questions that you have proposed. And also, I like the idea if the audience is interested to ask us a few questions.
Yeah, but I
would like
think
to open it.
We need to begin by introducing ourselves.
Oh, of course. Okay. So would you like me to start or should you?
Go ahead.
Okay. I'm Ronald K. Alexander, and my pronouns are he, him, and his. I'm calling in from South Orange, New Jersey, the land of the Lenape people. I am a non-disabled, cisgendered, light-complexioned, Black gay male, originally from Washington, D.C., and I've been living in New York City since 1981. I wear, obviously, black-rimmed prescription glasses. I have a shaven head. I have a green shirt on with black tapered pants and some fabulous boots. I'm sitting in a small office at a wonderful dance school called the Concepts Dance Academy in New Jersey, and the backdrop is white. I am a self-employed freelance dance artist, ballet teacher, educator, choreographer, administrator. How's that?
Hi. That's great. Hi, I'm Ananya. She, her pronouns. I am calling in from Minnesota, Makoche, the unceded territories of the Dakota and Ojibwe peoples. I am a brown-skinned South Asian woman with black and white hair. I'm wearing all black with silver earrings, and behind me is a golden wall with a beautiful mural that was created by some artists, and there is a sari hiding some unsightly behind me. I am a choreographer and dance maker and a professor of dance studies and a parent as well. So I resonated
Yes,
with the conversation before in many ways. So here we are. Ronald, do you want me to start by asking you a question?
Why not?
Okay, let's talk about personal practice. How has your personal practice changed over the years? How have you accommodated changing realities?
Okay, that's a very, very good question. And I have been actually teaching and choreographing and being an administrator for now 40 years. I started all of that after my performing career with the Hamburg, Frankfurt, and the National Ballet of Canada. I was just primarily interested in dancing and performing. And when I got to New York, I was invited to come to New York to start teaching with the Alvin Ailey School. I did not realize how fortunate I was, but luck had something to do with it, and being at the right time at the right place, as they say. And from the Ailey School, I have been able to teach and choreograph in many of the schools that are in New York City now. Steps, Broadway Dance, the French Academy of Ballet, public school where I was an administrator and a dance teacher. And I think to give you all of this background is very important, because each school, to a certain extent, I had to change my practice, because what's important to me is that you need to really, really consider the bodies that are in front of you. That is primarily important. And when I was, for example, in the public school system, and I didn't work in a performing arts school for the most part. I was part of a physical education program, but part of it was dance instruction. So I had to I taught ballet, but I also taught contemporary. I taught I taught a little Horton. I taught contemporary dance. But I'm saying all this is that I had to make the adjustments. I could not teach these public school kids, and I had 45 minutes to a class, the same kind of a class that I would teach students who are really, really interested in performing or in having a performing career. Even though I was very fortunate, there were quite a few kids that after having me as an instructor, they wanted to go into the performing arts. So in many ways, there's a whole change of life, for some of these kids. But I make these adjustments to the bodies, to the personalities that I have in class without lowering my standards. So how do you do it?
So this is Ananya. I am, I feel like I trained only in South Asian dance forms, and my gurus were unwavering. Whether you were tired or not, they were not going to consider that. So while that felt really hard in some ways, what I learned is dance is bigger than me. So if I'm to be of service in this field,
beautiful.
How can I be really aligned with what dance is? For me, it's a spiritual practice. So I have to understand. I think over the years, what I have had to understand is it's a trapeze act almost, right? It's balancing how one can invite in newer artists who are training in this form to understand, this concept of the heavy pelvis, where you're doing grounded footwork, for a long time, and your footwork has to be clear. How can I teach that? And how can I simultaneously say, yes, you will, it's not going to be accomplished in one day, but I have to remind you that it's a journey and you will have to get there.
Beautiful.
That excellence, that notion of what is excellent, so that we can keep striving. So
exactly.
That becomes not just a work for something called a studio, but it becomes a practice of life.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
And I think what I have had to learn, though, with specific reference to this panel, is that dance is also, to me, a very humbling practice. I recognize as my body grows older that I have to, first I could train really hard and I was ready for dancing. Now I have to I had to do yoga before I trained, even with more determination. So I was stretched. Now I have to do some other things. I have to do some Pilates. Then I have to do yoga. Then I'm ready. It keeps getting longer. So the practice just gets longer, but
yes,
that's what I have to do because I am in service. So the practice has changed, I suppose, to keep me humble and remembering that when I fall off balance, I don't have a knee-jerk reaction and say, that's terrible. It doesn't matter. You fell off. Just go back and do it again.
Exactly.
So I don't take it lightly that I fell off, but I need to recognize that I have to keep doing it.
Exactly.
That is the practice. So
that is so beautifully said. When I worked with Arthur Mitchell, and I always refer to him as Mr. Arthur Mitchell, he reminded us constantly, that we were in service to the art form. And again, we were in service to the art form. So the art form, and in that particular institution, of course, it was ballet. You were subservient to it. I mean, you as a teacher, as an artist, as an administrator, it was the training of the students. It was the training of the professional dancers. That was the most important, not your ego. He really didn't care what you thought because, well, he did to a certain extent, but what was important was his concept, Dance Theater of Harlem being the Black ballet company that it was and still maintained. So that what you're saying about being in service of the art form is so important, and it is so so humbling. I love the fact too that, you were talking about your training and what you do in terms of keeping in shape, keeping on top of it. I do the same thing. I am in those Pilates classes. I even post photos of me in the Pilates classes so people know, that I am staying on top of it. I still take a few ballet classes, but also I appreciate other techniques. I take Horton class. I even take some of the African dance class, which kills me. I mean, it's just very, very challenging on my body. But I'm just saying that I think it's important in terms of training and dance education for me to understand and to at least make the attempt to try to do other techniques beyond what you are an expert in. How does that sound?
It's interesting, Ronald. I have never trained in Western dance forms, and I don't train in them. It's not part of my aesthetic, and I feel there is a pressure sometimes to take class in Western dance forms as a validating force, and I refuse that. So, it's just I agree. I do love taking class taught by others, and I have to say, because I work with my brilliant company of Black and brown femmes, women and femmes, I have trained the next generation also to be amazing teachers, and they challenge me so much. And there are people on this call. I want to call out Makeda Thomas, who one time during the summer intensive taught this, such a difficult phrase. And I've kept following and I couldn't balance and I kept doing it. And so I think we have to find those pockets of teachers who will actually challenge us and keep us going. And I find that in yoga, I find that in Chow, training as much as I can, but I have to be careful where I select my teachers, because I'm not in that context. You are in a context where there is a lot of teachers that you can
exactly.
But I wanted to bring up something, Ronald, because I think that both you and I, because of the length of our careers, have seen some things, right? Even as we recognize ourselves as being humble to the discipline that we are studying, there can sometimes be another side to that, right? I mean, we've seen that in the name of that kind of like art is the best thing in the name of art. We must have seen like all these violences that have crept into the form. And so you must have had like me to really consider and chisel our pedagogy so that we are still understanding the humanity of our students, right?
Wow. Oh boy. Yes. I mean, what I just feel, I think you have to that you really have to stick to what you believe in as an instructor. You have to be loyal to your background. I mean, I respect the fact that you don't take non-Western forms. I started out with ballet, but also African dance. And it was always interesting to me that people would say, oh, ballet is very good for the discipline. And I would say, well, so is African dance. So there was this tremendous amount of value placed on ballet, and it still remains that it is the hierarchy of training, period, not just Western training. And I've always had an issue with that. As much as I love the whole ballet training, and I dance in companies, and I danced in an array of Sleeping Beauty, Eric Brook. I mean, listen, I did it all. Not the principal parts, but I did it all. But I always recognized other forms of dancing. And it's why I included that in my own, when I had my own, when I was at the Harlem School of the Arts and I ran the dance department, We had everything. We had ballet, we had tap, we had African dance, we had contemporary. And if I had known you, I would have brought you in to teach Indian dance. So I've always been open to other forms of training. And the beauty of New York City, is that there is so much here. So I've taken full advantage of the content here, of the schools that I've been in. I mean, every school that I was a faculty member of, I would take certain faculty members' classes, and they would take mine. So we all got together, and we would talk about pedagogy beyond just ballet technique. And what is really, really fantastic now, what I love doing, is that I'm working with actors. I teach at the Stella Adler a school of acting, and I'm working with actors who love to move. I mean, it's just so wonderful. So I'm teaching my ballet and my Pilates, and I'm having a great time. But I keep it straight. I try not to pollute the training with other little issues that are going on. I said, life is tough enough. Let's come into the studio, let's do our work, let's have our discussions and move on.
I see a question from the audience about other violences that have crept in that I mentioned. But may I ask you to clarify, Ronald, what do you mean by, what do you mean when you say, I don't want to pollute, I want to keep it straight? What does that mean? What do you mean by that?
Actually, I don't want to water it down. I mean, just because I'm teaching actors ballet, I don't necessarily water it down. I simplify it, but I don't water it down. In the back of my head, for example, I don't say, oh, they're actors, I don't have to do this, I don't have to do that. No. I really teach the curriculum. I teach the syllabus. I'm teaching now, for example, at Ailey. I teach in the professional division, but I'm also excited about the fact that I'm teaching absolute beginners in ballet. Absolute beginners in ballet, and that's really, really challenging because I have to demonstrate everything. But I keep it simple. I don't water it down. We still do the technique. We do the tendus. We do pirouettes, but I keep it as pure as I can to my knowledge.
It's very interesting. I'll
Yes.
talk back to you about that in a minute.
Okay.
But I want to respond to this question.
Yes.
Audience. So, I feel that also because I teach dance history, while I always think of my work in dance as being in service of a greater, something that is greater than me, dance is greater than me, and and what I'm in service of, because I think of myself as a social justice choreographer. I think
Beautiful
my
activist.
work is bigger than me. But I do know that sometimes this notion that the work we do is bigger than us has caused particularly gender-based hierarchies and violences. So I know, for instance, and I know this is not just in the field of Indian dance, so that is where I'm most familiar with, where some male gurus have pushed through, in the name of art, have pushed through some violences, and no one has called them on it for years, because, a guru's validation means everything. So I think that has happened with regard to gender, that has happened with regard to class, and that has happened with regard to caste. And
Absolutely.
all these violences in the name of what is best for art is also a complete violation of the art itself, because to use dance in that way, to push through one's personal agenda is really, really shameful. But I do want to mention that that when you and I are talking about being humble to the work, we are not saying we are make sure that we are not going to allow those violences to creep in. We are not using this greater than-ness in that way. I do want to say something to you, Ronald, though. Many traditionalists, though, would call my work impure.
What?
My work impure, what I do.
Why?
Because I created a contemporary dance form based on identifying, extending, and sort of intersecting movement principles from 3 dance forms. Odissi, which is a traditional dance form from the eastern state of Odisha, Chow, which is a martial art form from the eastern side of the country, specifically Mayurbhanj Chow, and yoga, which is, Vinyasa yoga. So I intersected the principles. So they are not, in fact, in that way, one form, but they are completely grounded in South Asian aesthetic. So I think I am hesitant to use words like pure practice or not. So it's just something, it's perspective. I do know what you mean.
I know you do.
Yeah. So we're running really short of time.
Already?
Yeah. See? Do you have any last words? How about I'll just talk a little bit about what I've done in terms of this panel of, I think it was about eldership, and then I'll pass it on to you. So I will just say that I have learned that the training of next generation artists and inviting and building a platform is one of the parts of my work that I'm so proud of. Because I think so that artists don't have to keep reinventing the wheel to create a space, a platform for them to be seen more, especially because I work with BIPOC women and femmes, it has been really important for me to build a platform. So, this institute where I am right now, the Shawngrām Institute, Shawngrām meaning resistance in daily life, this notion of the Shawngrām Institute for Performance and Social Justice is a refurbished used car sales garage, which we've made into a dance institute. And we rehearse here and conversate here. And artists can, the next generation artists can teach here, teach classes from here. They hold rehearsals here, their own rehearsals. So there is something, I feel like part of the work is to build platforms. Part of our generation's work has been to build platforms. Very often we find that dance is, even a generous and beautiful practice like dance has been co-opted by capitalism to set us together, right? So we are constantly in this competitive mode. So I feel like my life's work has been I hope to deflect that as much as I can. I'm proud that artists I've trained and artists who have worked with me are getting their own recognition in terms of awards and fellowships and doing their own work. And I hope to keep supporting that. We can't, some of the models that were set up for us in terms of really having to compete with each other is really, they're not sustainable and they're not.
No, they're not productive at all.
Yeah, go ahead, Ron.
Okay. And I love what you said about platforms, and what is so important to me right now, and it still infuses my training or the training of my students. I love, and I really mean it, I'm passionate about going to performances, and that is, again, another advantage of living in New York City. And I see my students. And when I say my students, it's not my personal students, but students from the Ailey Company, students from Dance Theater of Harlem. I was there, I helped to train them. And now, to see them perform, and when they give the school and the organization recognition for their training, that to me is what it's all about. And again, it's just getting back to what Arthur Mitchell said, you are in service to the art form. And that is exactly what I feel I continue to do. So on that, it was
what a fabulous conversation.
Absolutely, I had no idea. It just flew by. My God.
I know. We did not get to so many other questions.
No.
Fine. So here we are. Thank you. Are we at the outro?
I think we are. Okay. Thank you so much. An absolute pleasure to share the screen with you.
Yes,
And the best,
Ronald.
and the best of luck, please,
Thank
with
you.
everything. Thank you so much.
too, and thanks to Dance NYC for this amazing
Absolutely.
conversation and putting us in touch.
Oh,
Yes.
yes, I love it. I would like to continue to stay in touch. We have lots
Oh
to
my
talk
God.
about.
Such a wonderful conversation. I mean, I could just listen forever. Thank you, Beverly, Stacie, Alexandra, Makeda, Ananya, and Ronald. It was really an amazing, oh God, conversation. So to our attendees, I hope you all were able to also take away some transformative ideas and considerations. I would like to say a final thank you to our sponsors, to Cindy Kim from Viscardi Center and Jessica Ames, as well as Pam Pritzker-Ridley from Sign Nexus for their invaluable support for the session and throughout the conference. We are heading over to the session follow-up chat in the community section to take a few questions and wrap up the conversations if you want to join us there. Before I let you go, just a heads up on what's next. The daily debrief is next. It's a great way to and place to synthesize and reflect on everything that you have experienced at the symposium so far. You can, of course, continue to experience the symposium in many ways, in a couple of ways at least, like you can create virtual meetups and online conversations at our community board, or you can take some time away from the screen and rest, or visit our sponsors section of our website. Tonight's program includes closing remarks from Dance NYC, artistic offerings from the Clark Center and Hunter College Dance Department, and our final keynote conversation is on building community around dance for a future society. At an important global tipping point for change, this conversation forecasts what building community around dance will demand for the dance field and the wider society as we know it. We will be joined by Adham Hafez, Chris Walker, Kamal Sinclair, Christopher McDowell, and our moderator will be Anya Ozuzu. I hope you enjoyed the rest of your time at the symposium. Thanks again.
Thank you for joining today's session. A special thanks to our funders, the Andrew W. Mellon Foundation, the Howard Gilman Foundation, New York City Department of Cultural Affairs, New York State Council on the Arts, and the National Endowment for the Arts. A special thanks to our lead corporate sponsor, Con Edison, and our lead dance advocate, Jody Gottfried Arnold. Subsidies for the education and dance worker ticket tiers are made possible by the Arnold Foundation. A special thanks to our leader, host, and partner level sponsors, 92nd Street Y, Harkness Dance Center, Dance Education Library, Cataliotti Law, Full Out Creative, Gibney Dance Center, Kumbay Center for African and Diaspora Dance, the Actors Fund, Ballet Hispanico, Fit for Dance, Nai Ni Chin Dance Company, NDI Collaborative for Teaching and Learning, New York Live Arts, and Tom O'Connor Consulting Group. And last, but certainly not least, a special thanks to our Justice, Equity, and Inclusion partners, Art Beyond Sight, Art Space Sanctuary, Asian American Arts Alliance, Center for Traditional Music and Dance, the International Association of Blacks in Dance, Lotus Music and Dance, Museum Arts and Culture Access Consortium, National Association of Latino Arts and Culture, New York Foundation for the Arts, and Women of Color in the Arts. Up next at 4:15, we gather in community in our daily debrief, and at 6 o'clock, we gather for our final keynote presentation. Stay connected with us by posting your takeaways on social media using the hashtags DanceSimp, DanceNYC 2022, and DanceSimp 2022. On Instagram at dance.nyc, on Twitter at dance.nyc, and on Facebook at dance/NYC. Some features not to miss: Build your agenda of sessions. Connect with other attendees. Join community conversations. Visit the exhibitor hall. Don't forget to check out the 2022 Symposium Digital Program Book. How are we doing? Did you like a session? Use the like feature on your favorite session. Got feedback for us? Take the post-event survey after March 19th and tell us how we did. Need help? Email us at customerservice@dance.nyc. A special thanks to our broadcast streaming partners at Full Out Creative. Thanks for joining. Keep in touch at dance.nyc.